The morning light slid softly through the thin white curtains of her small apartment. The clock on the wall ticked in slow, steady beats, each sound marking another quiet second in her ordinary life. The hum of the refrigerator, the gentle drip from the coffee maker, the faint flutter of pigeons outside everything, blended into a calm rhythm that felt almost like a song she had known all her life. Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the rising steam from her cup. She was 32, but the mirror told her stories she didn't want to hear, stories of late nights, tired eyes, and a heart that hadn't laughed freely in years. The mug was warm against her palms. She lifted it, breathed in, and tried to convince herself that today would be different. Outside, the city was waking up. Car engines coughed to life, doors shut, and voices drifted faintly through the open window. She pulled her cardigan tighter, tracing the rim of her cup with a slow finger. Then her phone vibrated once on the table. She looked down. A single message. "Morning. Are you okay today?" Her heart skipped a small, guilty beat. The name on the screen glowed in blue dash mark. Mark worked with her in the same office, 2 desks away, separated only by a thin wooden divider. They had started talking over small things, broken printers, missed emails, the weather, but slowly. Their messages had grown longer, softer, warmer. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed, "I'm fine. Just coffee and silence before work." Then she erased the words, typed again. Finally, she wrote, "Morning. I'm okay. You?" A pause. The phone buzzed again. Same. Trying to find reasons to smile. "Maybe coffee will help." She smiled, small, quiet, but real. The kettle hissed softly behind her. The ticking clock grew louder for a moment, or maybe her heart did, at the office. Everything was the same as always. The smell of fresh paper, the clicking of keyboards, the muted phone rings. Yet, Emily felt the air shift slightly when Mark walked in. He wasn't tall, not movie handsome, but there was something gentle in the way he moved, like he always thought before speaking, like he noticed things others didn't. "Morning," he said, placing his bag near his chair. "Morning," she replied, eyes still on her computer screen. He leaned on her desk, pretending to check the printer cable. "Coffee didn't work," he whispered with a small grin, her lips curved. "Maybe you need stronger coffee, or maybe better company." Her laugh came before she could stop it. It was short and nervous, the kind that hides more than it shows. For a few seconds, the office noise faded behind them. The chatter, the phones, the hum of air conditioning. There was just the soft sound of his breath near her ear, the faint rustle of his sleeve brushing the desk. Then someone called his name. He stepped back quickly, clearing his throat, pretending nothing had happened. But both of them knew something had. During lunch, they sat at the small table near the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The world outside looked gray, but the space between them felt strangely warm. "Do you ever think," he began, stirring his soup slowly, "that life is quieter than it should be?" She looked at him. "Quieter?" "Yeah, like it's missing sound. Excitement, music." Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe we forget to listen." He nodded, eyes drifting to her hand resting beside the spoon. "Maybe." The rain grew louder. The ticking of the wall clock echoed again, filling the pauses between their sentences. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. When evening came, Emily sat at her desk long after everyone had gone. The glow of the monitor reflected on her face. She opened her email, trying to finish one last report, but her thoughts wandered. The hallway light flickered once. She heard slow footsteps, still here. It was Mark again, holding his jacket over one shoulder. She nodded. Just finishing up. He stood beside her desk, looking down at the papers. "You work too hard, and you stay late to tell me that?" He laughed softly. Maybe. For a moment, they both looked at the same computer screen, the same lines of text that neither of them were really reading. The air felt thick, not uncomfortable, just full of something unnamed. "You should go home," she said quietly. "I will," he replied. He didn't move. She didn't either. The lights above buzzed faintly. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded into the distance. Finally, he said, "Good night, Emily. Good night, Mark." He left, and the sound of the door closing was gentle, almost careful. Emily leaned back, staring at the doorway long after he had gone. Her coffee had gone cold. She lifted the mug anyway, pressing it to her lips as if warmth could return through memory. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moonlight slipped through the blinds, laying silver lines across her desk. The office was empty, quiet, but inside her chest, something new had begun to hum, a quiet, dangerous melody that she didn't yet know how to silence. The clock ticked. Again, tick, tick. Each sound fell into the silence like a secret she hadn't meant to keep. The next morning came with the same hum of the city cars starting. Footsteps in hallways, the faint chatter of radios from open windows. Emily walked to work with her umbrella half open, the drizzle making tiny tapping sounds like whispered words. Inside the office, the air smelled of damp paper and coffee. People talked about meetings, deadlines, and the rain that wouldn't stop. Everything looked the same as yesterday, but for her, it wasn't. She saw Mark standing by the printer, his sleeves rolled up, his tie slightly crooked. He looked tired, yet when his eyes met hers, he smiled, soft, unsure but real. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. Tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the rain outside grew heavier. A faint drumming sound that made the office feel smaller. At noon, when most people had gone out for lunch, Emily stayed behind, pretending to check her emails. She noticed Mark doing the same. "You're not eating?" he asked, walking over with a sandwich in hand. "Not hungry," she said. He tore his sandwich in half and offered her one piece. "Now you are." She hesitated, then took it. The bread was still warm. "You shouldn't share with me. You'll starve." T smiled. "I'm fine. I eat too much anyway." They ate quietly, sitting by the window. Rain rolled down the glass in crooked lines. "Why do you always stay here?" he asked. "I like quiet places," she said. "It feels safe." He nodded. "Me too." "Maybe that's why we talk so easily." She laughed softly. "We barely talk." He looked at her, serious this time. "No, we talk in small pieces. But I think we mean more than we say." The words hung between them. Neither of them knew what to do with them. Outside, thunder rolled far away, as if reminding them that silence could break at any time. Later that day, she found a sticky note on her desk. "Meeting canceled. Want to walk out when the rain stops?" She didn't answer. She just left her umbrella by the window where he could see it, when the rain finally faded into a mist. They left the building together. The streets shone with puddles reflecting the city lights. Their footsteps splashed quietly as they walked side by side. They didn't talk much. Sometimes that's how comfort sounds. Feels like the world is washing itself clean. He said. "Maybe it's trying," she replied. They stopped at a small cafe at the corner. The bell above the door jingled as they entered. The smell of baked bread and cinnamon filled the air. He ordered 2 coffees before she could speak. "You like yours plain, right?" She smiled. "You remember." "Of course," he said, a little too quickly. They sat near the window, watching the street glow orange from the lamplight. "You know this isn't right," she said after a long silence. He looked at her. "What isn't?" "This us. These little talks. These little..." Things, he nodded slowly, stirring his coffee, though it didn't need stirring. Maybe. But it feels right when I'm with you. Her heart gave a small, traitorous flutter. She looked down, pretending to watch the steam rise from her cup. Mark, I know, he interrupted softly. We'll keep it simple. Just friends. Friends don't look at each other like that, she whispered. He leaned back, sighing. Then maybe I don't know how to be your friend. They didn't speak again. The cafe grew quiet, except for the faint sound of rain beginning again on the window. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The room was dark, except for the glow of the clock. 1:14 a.m., she turned on her side and stared at her phone. No messages. Still, she could almost hear his voice, soft, uncertain. Kind. She thought about the way his hand had brushed hers when he passed the sandwich earlier. It wasn't deliberate, but it lingered. She whispered into the dark, "We're both fools." Her phone vibrated. A new message. Couldn't sleep. Just wanted to say thanks for today. She typed back before she could stop herself. You're welcome. Get some rest, you too. A pause. Then one more message came. Talking to you feels like breathing after holding my breath for too long. She read it again and again. Her chest ached in a strange, dangerous way. She didn't reply. Instead, she set her phone face down on the nightstand and listened to the silence fill the room again. The ticking clock grew slower, softer. The air felt heavy but calm, like the pause before a confession. Morning came again, new sun, same quiet. The city moved outside her window, alive and unaware. At work, she saw him, but they didn't speak. They just exchanged a glance that said everything and nothing. Later, during a meeting, he passed her a note under the table. You okay? She wrote back, trying to be. He smiled, just enough for her to see, then looked away. Their hands never touched. Their words never crossed a line. But the distance between them grew smaller with every silence they shared. It wasn't love yet. Not exactly. But something had begun a pull that neither of them had chosen. A quiet current beneath the surface of their days, and somewhere in that small, borrowed moment of warmth, both of them knew little distances were getting harder to keep. The morning sun was pale, like it wasn't sure it wanted to shine. Emily sat by her small kitchen window with her journal open and a pencil in her hand. The pages were full of half-finished thoughts, small sketches, and dates that no longer meant much. She drew a slow, straight line down the page, then another one crossing it. Boundaries, she whispered to herself. Lines I won't cross. But she didn't write what those lines were. Maybe because she wasn't sure anymore. The phone on the table buzzed. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Mark, meeting today got pushed to 11. Want to grab coffee first? Her heart did a small, familiar jump. She set her pencil down and stared at the message. A few seconds passed before she typed back, Okay, just coffee. The cafe near their office was quiet that morning. The smell of roasted beans hung in the air and soft music hummed from the old speaker in the corner. A couple sat by the window sharing a slice of cake, laughing over something private. Emily and Mark chose a table at the back. He smiled when he saw her. You look tired, he said softly. Didn't sleep much, she replied, stirring her coffee. Too many thoughts. Anything you want to talk about? She looked up at him. Some things are better written in pencil. He frowned a little. Why pencil? Because you can erase it later. He smiled faintly. I get it. Temporary things. Not temporary, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Just uncertain. The way he looked at her then made her chest tighten. There was a pause, one of those heavy, wordless moments that seemed to stretch time itself. Finally, he said, I wish I'd met you years ago. Her spoon stopped moving. Don't say that. Why not? Because it sounds like a wish that comes with guilt. He nodded slowly, eyes dropping to his cup. Maybe it does. They didn't speak after that. The only sounds were the gentle clinks of spoons and the soft rain starting again outside by afternoon. The rain had turned into a storm. People rushed through the hallways with folders over their heads. The office windows shook a little with the wind. Emily stood near the copier, staring out at the gray world. Mark approached quietly, holding 2 cups. "You didn't eat lunch again," he said, offering one to her. She smiled, taking the cup. "You watch me too closely. Someone has to." For a moment, they stood side by side, watching the storm. The sound of rain filled the silence between them, soft but endless. She turned to him. What we're doing, it's dangerous." He looked at her. "We're just talking, are we?" She asked gently. He didn't answer. She stepped back, her hand brushing the side of his arm. "We can't keep walking this close to the line." "Maybe," he said, voice low. "But sometimes the line feels like the only place I can breathe." Her heart thudded once loud, unsteady. "Don't make this harder," she whispered. "I'm not trying to," he said. "I'm just being honest." "Then stop. Stop being honest. Stop making me want to be." The words came out too fast, too soft. She regretted them the moment they left her lips. But it was too late. His eyes had already caught the truth in them. Neither moved. The storm outside filled the air with a deep, trembling sound. Then the office lights flickered. The power blinked out for a moment, leaving only the dim gray of the sky lighting the room. For that brief second, it was just them 2 people suspended between right and wrong. Light and shadow, wanting and restraint. The lights came back on. They both looked away. That evening, Emily sat again with her notebook. She drew another line, darker this time. Next to it, she wrote, "No late calls. No private messages. No us." Her phone buzzed again. "Mark. Power, finally back home. Hope you're warm." She stared at the message. Her thumb hovered above the keyboard. She wanted to reply something simple, safe, "You too." But she didn't. Instead, she wrote, "We should stop talking so much." The reply came quickly. "If that's what you want." She hesitated. Then typed, "It's what we need." He didn't reply again. The silence stretched, filling her room like fog. She set her phone down and closed her eyes. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, everything felt louder. Emptier. The quiet was supposed to bring peace. But it didn't. It just made her aware of how much she had come to depend on the sound of his voice. His texts, his laughter that lived somewhere between friendship and something more. An hour later, another buzz. "Mark, I'll try to keep my distance. Just wanted to say you make the world less heavy." She read it 3 times before whispering, "You shouldn't say things like that." But even as she said it, she was smiling. She looked at her notebook again, at the dark line she'd drawn. The pencil mark seemed softer now, less certain, almost like it was waiting to be erased. She picked up the pencil and wrote beneath it, quietly, "Sometimes." Lines aren't meant to last. Outside, the storm was fading. The city lights glowed again, blurred through wet glass. Inside her chest, something she'd tried to lock away kept breathing slowly, softly, stubbornly alive. The office was unusually alive that evening. A faint hum of conversation drifted through the halls, mixed with the clinking of glasses and soft music from a small speaker in the corner. Someone had decided they all needed a team bonding night, though most people treated it as an excuse to drink coffee and gossip about work. Emily stood near the window, holding a paper cup that had long gone cold. Outside, the city glowed in golden striped scars moving. Rain puddles catching the light. People walking with umbrellas tilted just so. Inside, Everything felt close. Too close? Mark was there, of course. Laughing with a few others near the snack table, his smile easy and open. Every so often, though, his eyes found hers. Not long, not obvious, just long enough for her to feel it. She looked away, pretending to check her phone. The screen showed nothing but her own reflection. Enjoying yourself? The voice startled her. Mark had walked up quietly, a plate of snacks in one hand, casual smile on his lips. Trying to, she said, returning the smile. He offered her a cookie. Chocolate makes everything better. I'm not sure about everything, she said, taking it anyway. He leaned against the wall beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The music filled the space between them, soft, slow, nostalgic. You look different tonight, he said finally. Different how? Like you're pretending not to think too much. She laughed lightly. That's accurate. Shh. He tilted his head, studying her expression. You always think too much, don't you? I have too, she said. Someone has to balance your impulsiveness. He grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Don't. Their laughter blended with the sound of rain starting again outside. The window fogged slightly from the warmth inside. As the night grew quieter, people began to leave. The crowd thinned, and the once busy chatter turned to murmurs. Emily gathered her things slowly, hoping to avoid a goodbye that might feel too heavy. But Mark was waiting near the door, his jacket already on. Leaving? He asked, Yes, I'll walk you out. You don't have to. I want to. She hesitated. Mark? He smiled. It's just a walk. She didn't argue. The rain had softened to a fine mist. The streetlights shimmered against the wet pavement. Their footsteps made soft splashes as they walked. For a while, they said nothing. Just the quiet rhythm of rain, the faint hum of a passing car, and the sound of their breathing in sync. Feels strange, she said finally. What does? This us, it feels like standing too close to a fire. Warm but dangerous. He asked gently. Exactly. He looked ahead, his voice low. Maybe we both needed warmth too badly to care. She stopped walking. You shouldn't say that. But it's true, he said, turning toward her. The lamplight painted his face in soft gold. He looked tired but alive, like someone fighting himself every day and losing gracefully. You have someone waiting for you at home, she reminded him. And I have my own walls for a reason. He nodded. I know. But sometimes even walls need a window. Her throat tightened. You make it sound beautiful, but it isn't. I know that too. They stood under the same umbrella now, rain pattering softly above them. Their shoulders brushed. It was nothing, and yet, it was everything. Do you ever think, he said quietly, that maybe we met at the wrong time? Sometimes, she admitted. Would you want it to be another time? She looked up, meeting his eyes. It doesn't matter. We don't get to choose the timing. He smiled sadly. Then we just walk carefully, I guess. She nodded. Carefully. They resumed walking. The umbrella tilted slightly, bringing them closer. She could hear the soft rhythm of his heartbeat, steady but uneven, matching her own. The street curved ahead, glowing with reflected light. When they reached her building, they stopped at the door. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For walking me home. He nodded. Any time. There was a pause. The kind that felt like standing on the edge of something vast and uncertain. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Good night, Emily. Good night. Mark. He turned to leave, but she called out. Wait. He stopped. She stepped closer, just enough to take his hand for a brief second, warm, gentle, trembling slightly. Don't forget, she whispered. We said carefully. I won't, he said. His voice barely audible. She let go, and he walked away. The rain had stopped. The city's sounds returned: distant laughter, tires on wet roads. The buzz of neon lights. Emily stood at the doorway, her heart heavy and full at the same time inside. Her apartment was quiet as always: the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the soft rustle of her coat as she hung it. But something had changed. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of echoes of footsteps, laughter, words she shouldn't remember but did. She sat down, took out her journal. Kay turned to a clean page. She drew another line, slower this time. Not straight, just enough to show hesitation. Next to it, she wrote, "We walked carefully." But the ground moved anyway. She closed the book and leaned back, eyes closed, letting the night sink into her bones. Outside, somewhere in the rain-dark city, a man was walking home under an empty umbrella, replaying the same conversation in his mind: every word, every silence, every almost. And though they were apart, it felt like they were still walking the same street, just a few steps away, separated only by the faint, trembling line of what should never be but already was. The night was colder than usual. The wind carried the faint smell of wet leaves and city smoke, curling through the narrow streets like whispers looking for a place to rest. Emily pulled her scarf tighter as she climbed the steps to her apartment building. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt drenched, heavy, reflective, full of echoes. She reached her door and paused. A small paper bag sat neatly on the mat. Steam rose faintly from it, still warm. Inside was a note written in familiar, slightly uneven handwriting. "Didn't want you to skip dinner again. Soup's still hot." Her heart gave a tiny, tired flutter. She picked up the bag and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet, as always. She set the bag on the counter, opened it carefully, and breathed in the gentle scent of chicken broth and herbs. It wasn't just food. It was care, disguised in a brown paper bag. She stood there for a moment, unsure what to do with that kind of kindness. Then came a soft knock. She froze. A heartbeat later, she opened the door. Mark stood there, still holding his umbrella, his jacket damp at the shoulders. His eyes searched hers, uncertain. "I was just making sure you got it," he said. "I did." "Good." She hesitated. "You didn't have to come up, I know." He gave a small, awkward smile. "I just couldn't leave it outside without checking." Rain dripped from the edge of his umbrella. She stepped aside. "You can come in. Just for a minute." The door closed with a quiet click. Inside, the lights were dim. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. He set the umbrella near the door, careful not to drip on the floor. "Smells good," she said. "I tried not to burn it," he replied, smiling. "No promises." They both laughed lightly, the sound fragile but warm. She poured the soup into 2 bowls, and they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The steam rose between them like a veil. "It's nice," she said after a spoonful. "You didn't have to go through the trouble." "It wasn't trouble. You're always trying to fix things." He looked down. "Maybe because I can't fix the one thing that matters." Her spoon paused midair. "Mark," he met her eyes. "You know what I mean?" She set her spoon down slowly. "Don't." "I'm not saying anything you don't already feel," he whispered. She leaned back, exhaling. "Feelings don't make it right." He nodded, staring at the table. "You're right. They don't, but they make it real." Silence again. The ticking clock filled the space between them. He reached across the table without thinking, brushing the edge of her hand. She didn't pull away. The contact was light, barely there, but it felt like the air had changed around them. "You should go," she said softly. "I will. Now." He didn't move. "Mark," she said again. But her voice trembled. He stood up slowly, chair scraping gently against the floor. "I just wanted to see you were okay." "I'm fine." He nodded. "Good." But his voice cracked slightly, betraying the words. He walked to the door, hand on the handle, but didn't open it. "You ever wonder," he said quietly, "if the universe puts two people too close just to test them?" She looked up. "All the time." He turned halfway toward her. "I fail the test every day." "Don't," she whispered. He smiled sadly. "Too late for perfect scores." The air grew thick again. The faint hum of the refrigerator became the only sound. She stood slowly and took a step closer. "We can't do this." "I know." "Then why are we still standing here?" "Because leaving feels wrong, and staying feels worse." They were close, now close enough to feel the warmth from each other's breath. The quiet between them was filled with everything they weren't saying. She looked up, her eyes uncertain, but her voice calm. "Mark," he swallowed. "Emily, you should go," she said again, softer this time. He nodded. "Okay." But neither moved. Then, gently, she reached for his hand. Just for a moment. Their fingers touched, lingered, then let go. "We said carefully," she whispered, repeating the words that had kept them safe so far. "I remember." "Then remember this too," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Sometimes caring is walking away before you destroy the good that's left." He nodded again, eyes glassy but steady. He opened the door. Cold air slipped in, carrying the scent of rain and city lights. She stood in the kitchen doorway, arms folded, watching him leave. "Good night, Emily." "Good night, Mark." The door closed softly behind him. She stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of his fading footsteps. Then she sat down again, staring at the empty bowl on the table. The steam had vanished. The soup was cold dust in the distance. Thunder rolled once, then stopped. She whispered into the stillness. "Carefully," we said. She got up, washed the dishes slowly, each sound echoing softly in the small apartment. Finally, she opened her notebook and wrote, "He stood in the doorway, neither in nor out. That's where we live, now between." She closed it and turned off the light. Outside, the rain began again, gentle and endless, as if the sky itself couldn't decide whether to let go or hold on. Sunday mornings were usually Emily's favorite. The city outside was slower, softer, almost kind. But today, everything felt heavy. Even the lights seemed to fall differently, thin and cold, stretching across her kitchen table like a memory that refused to fade. Her phone lay face down beside her mug. She had promised herself she wouldn't check it. Not today. Not after what had happened at the doorway, the warmth, the hesitation, the almost. She sipped her coffee, but it had already gone cold. The phone buzzed, once, then again. She stared at it for a long time before flipping it over. "Mark, can we talk?" "Just talk. I need to say something." She closed her eyes. Her heartbeat matched the slow ticking of the wall clock. "You shouldn't," she told herself. "You already know how this ends," but her fingers were already moving. "Okay, call me." His voice came through soft, careful, almost afraid. "Hi," she said back, her own voice trembling despite her effort to sound steady. A moment of silence. Only their breathing filled the line. "I didn't sleep," he admitted. "I didn't either. I kept thinking about that night, about what I said, and didn't say." "You don't have to," she said quickly. "We already agreed." "I know," he cut in gently. "But some things don't listen to rules." She looked at the window, at the sky outside. "We made those rules for a reason." "I know." Another silence. "Emily," he said finally, "I care about you. Probably more than I should. And I hate that it feels wrong, Because it doesn't. Not when I'm with you. Her throat tightened. You shouldn't say things like that. I've been trying not to, he whispered. But pretending doesn't make it go away. She exhaled shakily. Mark, please. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just needed you to know. That's all. She leaned back against the chair, her hand over her chest. You think that makes it easier? No, he said softly. Just more honest. For a while, neither spoke. Then Emily said, You have someone waiting for you. Someone who trusts you. What happens to her if you keep talking like this? I won't lie to her, he said after a pause. I'm not that man. Then what will you tell her? The truth. That I'm lost. Her voice trembled. And me? What happens to me if you keep saying these things? He didn't answer. The silence between them was long enough to fill with everything they didn't dare say aloud. Finally, she whispered, We can't keep doing this. Mark, I know. Then stop calling me. He took a slow breath. If I do, will you stop thinking about me? She closed her eyes. That's not fair. Neither is this. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. You make it sound like love. Maybe it is, he said. Then it's the wrong kind. The line went quiet again. I'm sorry, he whispered. You don't deserve this. Neither do you, she replied. The sound of distant church bells floated through her open window. Somewhere, a child laughed. Life went on, as it always does, no matter how hearts break in silence. Later that day, Xe sat at her desk, staring at the blank screen of her computer. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but her mind wouldn't focus. Every sound reminded her of the buzz of the phone, the sigh of the wind against the glass. Even the rhythm of her heartbeat. When she finally opened her messages again, his name was still there. She hesitated, then typed, You don't need to explain anything. Just take care of yourself. She hit send before she could stop herself. A few minutes later, the reply came. I'll try. But I miss our talks already. Her eyes burned. She typed back, Then don't forget them. Forget me. Then, before she could change her mind, she turned off her phone. That evening, she walked outside. The air was cool and damp, the pavement glistening under streetlights. She found herself near the park where they had once eaten lunch together. The same bench where they had shared a sandwich in the rain. She sat down, folded her arms, and listened to the sound of leaves moving in the wind. For a moment, she imagined him sitting beside her, the same small smile, the same careful words. She could almost hear him say, We're both trying to do the right thing, aren't we? She whispered into the wind, We are. A soft gust carried her words away. That night, as she prepared for bed, her phone vibrated once more. She hesitated before picking it up. Mark, I told her the truth. It wasn't easy. I didn't tell her your name. But I told her I needed to figure out who I am before I can be anyone's husband again. Emily sat on the edge of the bed. Staring at the message, her fingers trembled as she typed, I hope she forgives you. His reply came almost instantly. I hope you do too. She stared at those words for a long time before turning off the light. The darkness felt softer, now not empty, but full of something fragile and real. She lay down and whispered into the dark. Almost confessions, almost love, almost peace. And as she closed her eyes, the sound of rain began again, slow and gentle, like the heartbeat of something unfinished, yet somehow complete. Days passed in a quiet blur. The city kept moving, as it always did, traffic lights blinking, buses sighing at every stop, people walking quickly through the drizzle. But for Emily, time had lost its rhythm. Each morning felt the same. Wake up, stare at the ceiling. Wonder if silence could ever stop sounding like his voice. She hadn't heard from Mark in a week. Not since the night he told her he had spoken the truth at home. Since then, her phone had stayed still, cold and quiet, as if waiting for her to break the silence first. She didn't. But one evening, as the sun faded into orange, the doorbell rang. Her pulse stumbled. She stood frozen for a moment before walking to the door. When she opened it, he was there. Rain on his shoulders, a folded note in his hand. His eyes tired but calm. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." He held up the note. "I wasn't sure if I should give this to you in person. What is it? Closure, maybe." She didn't know what to say. So she stepped aside and he came in. The apartment smelled faintly of chamomile and rain. He placed the note on her table, but didn't sit down. "I told her everything," he began. "Not details. Just the truth. That my heart wasn't where it was supposed to be." Emily nodded slowly. "And?" "She asked me to leave for a while," he said quietly. "Said I should figure out what kind of man I am. I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, shaking his head. She deserved honesty, even if it broke us. Silence hung between them, fragile, trembling, but strangely peaceful. He looked around the small apartment, his gaze landing on the mug by the sink. The open notebook on the table, the faint glow of a lamp. "It feels like you," he said softly. "What does?" "This place. It's quiet, but alive." She smiled faintly. "Like me then?" "Exactly." For a moment, they stood there, no words, just the hum of the world outside and the faint sound of rain returning. Finally, she asked, "What now?" He smiled sadly. "Now, I start over. Figure out who I am when I'm not pretending to be okay. And me." She asked quietly. He looked at her for a long time before speaking. "You keep being the kind of person who makes broken people believe in light again." Her chest tightened. "Mark, don't. I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to hear that, because you changed something in me. You reminded me what honesty feels like." Tears stung her eyes. "You make it sound like goodbye." He took a slow breath. "It is. For now, it has to be." They sat down, side by side on the couch, not touching. "I wish we could have met somewhere else," she whispered. "Somewhere simpler." "Maybe we did," he said softly. "Maybe this was the only way the universe knew how to teach us something." "Teach us what?" "That love doesn't always mean staying." She laughed quietly through her tears. "That's a cruel lesson." He smiled gently. "Maybe, but it's a real one." She looked at him. "So this is your choice?" He nodded. "To leave before I ruin the one thing that still feels pure." She wanted to argue, to tell him that maybe they could build something new from all the wrong pieces. But deep down, she knew he was right. So instead, she reached for his hand, slowly, hesitantly. He took it, holding it as if memorizing the shape of her fingers. They sat there for a long time, hand in hand, surrounded by silence and the faint ticking of the clock. No promises, no plans, just truth. Finally, she whispered, "If I don't see you again." "You will," he said softly. "Someday. When we've both learned how to breathe without guilt." Her voice trembled. "You think we can?" "I have to believe we can." He stood then, gently releasing her hand. "Take care of yourself, Emily. You too. Mark." He turned toward the door, his footsteps soft against the floor. When he reached it, he stopped and looked back one last time. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me feel seen, even if just for a while." She smiled through her tears. "You were always seen. You just needed to open your eyes." He nodded, opened the door, and stepped out. The air that rushed in was cool, carrying the scent of wet concrete and distant thunder. He walked down the hallway slowly, and she watched until he disappeared around the corner. The door clicked shut. Behind him, Emily stood in the silence for a long time. Then she picked up the folded note he had left on the table. She unfolded it carefully. Inside were only a few words written in his uneven handwriting. If love is real, it doesn't vanish. It just waits for a better time. She read it again and again until the letters blurred. Then she pressed it to her chest and whispered, "Then I'll wait not for you, but for peace." The clock ticked softly. The rain grew steady outside. The city kept glowing indifferent, alive inside. A woman stood in the quiet light of her small apartment. No longer waiting for the past to return, but learning, slowly, how to let the future find her instead. The sun rose quietly, slipping gold through the curtains like a secret the world was gently whispering back into her life. The air was cool, clean after the night's rain. The street below was already awake, buses humming, children laughing, a vendor calling out the price of bread. It was another ordinary morning, but it felt different. Emily stood by the window, holding her coffee cup in both hands. The warmth against her fingers was steady, grounding. The sky outside was pale blue, almost weightless. She watched it for a long time, letting the calm fill her chest. It had been a week since Mark left. No calls, no messages, just stillness. And for the first time, it didn't ache. It just existed like a healed scar still visible, but no longer tender. She smiled softly to herself and whispered, "Maybe that's what peace feels like." Her apartment was quieter now, but not empty. It was hers again, the rhythm of her own footsteps, the sound of her pencil moving against paper, the little hum she made while watering the plants by the window. She'd started writing again. Not reports, not notes for work stories. Small, honest pieces about moments that never made it into the world. A forgotten umbrella. 2 cups of coffee, a kindness left at someone's door. She didn't write about him directly, but he was there in every pause, in every unfinished sentence. That afternoon, she visited the small cafe where they used to sit. The same bell jingled when she opened the door, the same smell of coffee and baked bread wrapped around her. The barista smiled in recognition. "Long time no see," the woman said. "Yeah," Emily replied softly. "Just needed some quiet." She ordered a plain coffee, no sugar, just as before, and sat by the window. The same seat, the same view of the street, but this time it was only hers. Outside, a young couple shared an umbrella, laughing as they ran across the street. Emily watched them, her lips curving into a small, wistful smile. Maybe once, she thought, that kind of story could have been hers. But now she knew, not every connection was meant to last. Some were meant to change you, not keep you. When she returned home that evening, the apartment glowed in the warm light of sunset. She placed her bag on the chair and noticed something she hadn't seen before, the folded note from Mark, still sitting where she'd left it, on the edge of the table. She picked it up carefully, unfolding it again. If love is real, it doesn't vanish. It just waits for a better time. She traced the words with her thumb. They no longer felt like an open wound. They felt like something gentola, memory that could be carried without pain. She took a deep breath and slipped the note into her journal, between the pages of her newest story. Then she wrote beneath it in her own hand. Sometimes love's purpose is to teach us how to let go beautifully. As the night fell, she lit a small candle by the window. The flame flickered, soft and steady. She played an old vinyl record, something slow, piano and strings. The music filled the room with a peace she hadn't known she was missing. She walked to the balcony. The city stretched out before her, lights twinkling like quiet promises. Somewhere out there, Mark was beginning his own new chapter. She didn't know where or how, and she didn't need to. For the first time, the thought of him didn't bring longing, it brought gratitude. She whispered into the wind. "Thank you for teaching me what real love costs and what freedom feels like." A soft breeze answered, carrying the faint scent of rain and the city's heartbeat. She closed her eyes, breathing it in. Later, as she got ready for bed, she noticed her phone light up. For a second, her heart jumped, but it wasn't him. It was her mother. A simple message: "Dinner tomorrow." She smiled and typed back, "Yes, I'll bring dessert." It was such a small thing, yet it felt like a beginning. She turned off the lamp, leaving the candle's glow to fill the room. The clock ticked softly in the background, steady, comforting, alive. Emily lay back, eyes half closed, and listened to the city breathing outside her window. Cars in the distance, a dog barking, the wind brushing against the glass. Her last thought before sleep was simple and quiet. We loved carefully. We walked the edge, and we survived it. In another part of the city, Mark stood at his own window. The night was deep, full of quiet stars. He held his phone in his hand, scrolling through old messages. Then, slowly, he deleted them all, not in anger, but in peace. He whispered her name once, softly, and smiled. "Thank you," he said to the night, and somewhere between two windows, to people who once almost fell in love, breathed out the same word at the same time: goodbye. Not in sadness, but in release.